analysts. So let's have a look at the global media and how they're digesting some of the top stories today. So we begin with the Mail in South Korea, one of their main dailies. And it's covering, of course, the country's new relationship with the South. Its headline quotes Kim Jong-un and President Moon saying it's time to quickly deliver on our agreement. The front page of the Hong Kong Economic Journal looks at China's retaliation to the US trade tariffs, but says both sides haven't gone as far as they could. The Financial Times in the UK is talking about Tesla being investigated by the US Department of Justice after the boss Elon Musk's tweet about taking the company private. You may remember that the plans were abandoned, but not before shares in Tesla soared on his initial tweet. The Guardian in the UK reports on a walkout by McDonald's workers in the US. We are not on the menu, say some of the protesters, as they claim sexual harassment in their industry is rampant. And then McDonald's is making the headlines in the Philippines. Star, two Filipino Americans whose prank on the company went viral, will star now in McDonald's marketing campaigns. The friends hung a poster of themselves on the walls of one restaurant in Texas to make a statement about diversity. It went unnoticed for several months. Well, Stephanie is back. Stephanie Hare, independent political analyst, to talk us through some of these stories. And we thought it would be very interesting to look at some of the local press that's covering what's going on between the two leaders of the two Koreas. Now, I cannot read this, and nor can you, Stephanie, but we have a translator here with us overnight here at the BBC. So she has very diligently translated some of it for us so we can give a sense of what they're saying. And it talks about President Moon saying, you know, the time is now to deliver an agreement, and it really brings that sense of this is really, really important, that something is done, something concrete is done, more than just, you know, what we see on the screens, as in the warm hugs, the handshakes, the smiles. It's important that real business is done.
Yes, and the fact that this is the third time that the leaders of the two Koreas have met since April. It's the first time since Mr. Moon has gone to North Korea, so in like a decade. So I think you're right in that sort of the mood music and the cadence of this is really accelerating. They want to co-host the Summer Olympics in 2032. They're talking about allowing family visits. They want to cooperate on healthcare. They want to link up railways. And obviously the big goal is denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
So, I mean, you know, what's written in these articles sounds quite hopeful, but at the same time, I mean, they're not sceptical as such, but they are basically saying there's a lot riding on this, and you know, we can see that things can change quite quickly. But it's quite interesting when they say they want to work together to bid for the Olympics. It was the Winter Olympics that actually was the catalyst for all this happening in the first place, wasn't it? Yeah,
I love soft diplomacy. It can be anything from, you know, ping pong between the United States and China. It can be the exchange of pandas. It can be hosting Olympics. It's so much about culture, right? We sometimes forget that. We like to focus so much on hard power. But actually, there's a lot of, you know, the fact that these are countries that share so much history, but also so much pain, and that culture can be a way, and sport obviously, to find a way to bridge those gaps.
And also these articles talk about the pressure at home. You know, for President Moon, there's a lot of pressure on him at home. You know, the economy is not doing so well. The people want to see that this is not just about North Korea getting what it wants. It's very important for South Korea that they make progress in many areas, but it's just about the normal day-to-day stuff. You know, living life and life getting easier for them, and the economy is not doing so well.
Yes, and there's also, of course, the specter of the United States and U.S. President Donald Trump wanting to see this, you know, really happen so that he can claim it as a big foreign policy win. So I think it's really important as we look at these two interlocutors to remember who's off stage.
Yes,
you know?
Absolutely. Always in the wings. Well, talking of him being in the wings, let's move on to Hong Kong Economic Journal and their take on, you know, the sort of the trade war that has escalated in the last sort of 48 hours. And talking about China was really swift to respond. I mean, to be honest, you know, China probably had its game plan all figured out. I mean, they probably knew that Trump would deliver on his promise of the $200 billion worth of tariffs. They were ready.
They were absolutely ready. We've seen this sort of trailed, like a boxer in a boxing fight. This punch has been telegraphed for some time, and we know what China's response is going to be. So we can start to look towards the end game and really be like, what on earth has to happen to end this? Because this is really not great for business. Business doesn't necessarily like it, but at the same time, you've got two countries who are both in violation of the World Trade Organization. So that's interesting in terms of what does that say about the international scene. But also, what's it going to have to take to bring them to the table and get this done so that business as usual can resume?
Markets are fairly sanguine about this. In fact, in Asia, they're rising today quite significantly. Everybody's saying, oh, this is quite low-level stuff. It's not going to really, in terms of, the pound in our pocket, it's not going to hit us that hard. But from the point of view of the politics in the United States, with the midterms not that far away, it's very important for him, isn't it, that, his message to those who will vote in mid-November.
That's right. So Donald Trump is really looking to say to his base, and hopefully other fans as well, he has this idea that the United States has been getting a bad deal, and that China has been unfair, and that previous U.S. presidents have been allowing this to go on for too long. So all of these things are sort of playing to the crowd, really being like, look at all the things that I'm doing for you. Now, will this actually improve life for the average U.S. worker? Right? That's the, can he make that connection? And will the average U.S. voter in November go into the ballot box thinking about that, or are they thinking about other things?
What's the mood like there? I mean, are people... is the Trump faithful still really happy with him, pleased with him? I mean, what do we think is going to happen in mid-November?
I mean, oh gosh, I wish I had
it's very hard for you to answer that question.
All 330 million Americans, tell me quickly. No, I think we're approaching a very important. This is an opportunity potentially for the Democrats to recapture the House. But Donald Trump's base is very strong, so they're delighted with him. They want him to keep going, and it's really that question of getting people out. The problem with the midterms is often low voter turnout. So both sides are going to be really worried about that, and both sides will seek to galvanize voters to really go and vote. An unprecedented number of women are running, so that's really exciting and potentially interesting, because women, I think, make up something like 20% of the House, so it's not great.
All right. Just a really quick word on Tesla and Elon Musk, the maverick billionaire who just does not play by the rules at all. And the Department of Justice now is looking into his tweet where he just tweeted, I'm thinking of taking this company private.
Funding secured.
Yes, yes.
That's the thing.
And, when you're listed on financial markets, I mean, there are rules.
Yeah. You can't just tweet, or you can.
And the Tesla sort of media machine, PR machine, has to just keep, reacting really quickly to what Elon Musk does tweet. They have to sort of come out with the corporate line and counter these things.
Yeah, I mean, what's tricky for him is that he really gave investors the impression that he had funding secured by saying funding secured. He gave a price that he wanted to take Tesla.
Yeah, it was very specific.
$420 per share. And that led to a spike in the share price of 8.5%. So if he didn't have that money, and of course he wasn't able to cobble together something, he had given the impression that the Saudi wealth fund had wanted to invest, and they have not. And so then he decided he wasn't doing that.
In fact, they've invested in Arrival.
Indeed. So I think what his lawyers are most likely going to try to do is be like, it's Twitter, he was musing, he was just floating an idea, he's unconventional, but the Securities and Exchange Commission and potentially the Department of Justice may not care. It's really interesting because it will really show the responsibility for business leaders on social media.
Absolutely. It is really interesting, as you say. I wanted to highlight this story. McDonald's workers striking in the US yesterday saying sexual harassment where they are is rampant, and it's not just specific to McDonald's. This is, the fast food industry. And I mean, I was thinking about, I was just thinking about this on a practical level. And if I was, 20 years old, a woman who desperately needed the work, and I'm working in McDonald's or somewhere else, and I'm being sexually harassed, what support have I got if I raise that issue?
Very little.
A much older male boss may not be a male boss, whatever. It might not be a female who's being harassed, but either way, what is there in terms of, what is there around me to support me if I want to try and walk through that journey, which is very difficult?
Well, and I think you've raised a really important point about power imbalances. So if somebody has this job and they've absolutely got to put food on the table and pay bills, as we all do, how much power do they have to walk away if they are not wanting to put up with this? Is taking it forward to HR really an option? Are you going to get penalized for that? Are you going to be questioned yourself?
These are, it's a franchise.
Yep.
It's not like a big organisation where you have a clear line of,
Yep.
you can ring this number if you feel you're being bullied or harassed or whatever. This is the process you take.
Yeah, and
you're protected in that process. I mean, it's a totally different scenario.
What's really depressing about all of these stories, I think, is that we're really just seeing how consistently these power imbalances are happening across the board. So whether it's Hollywood actresses or women in Fortune 500 companies or women on the front line of retail, we keep hearing the same stories over and over again. So on the one hand, it's inspiring that finally women are sharing it. They're talking. The Me Too movement has a legal fund so people can get support now, whereas perhaps they might not have. But we need to have a real conversation in our culture about power and respect.
Absolutely, but this is power at a very low level, and that's where often it's overlooked, isn't it? They don't get the support they need. Stephanie, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. Thank you.